Good evening, Yorktown. Welcome to the 6th meeting of the Coalition on Community Safety and Engagement. It is Wednesday, January 6th. I appreciate everyone taking time out of their busy schedules to join us. We're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you could please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of
the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands,
under
one
God,
nation,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Rabbi Weiner if you could lead us in a moment of silence tonight.
I would be happy to and honored to. Before we get to that moment of silence, I just wanted to offer the following words of prayer.
Thank you.
And that is, O source of light and life in this world, please grant protection to all of the men and women on the front lines in D.C. who are putting themselves in harm's way. Also grant healing to all of the individuals in D.C., whether it is our leadership or whether it is those participating in different ways. Please grant a sense of healing to all those that are in need of healing in that city, but also grant healing to this entire country, whether it is the struggles that they are going through in managing COVID or their loved ones who are managing COVID, or just those that are sitting at home like us and watching these images of what's happening in our nation's capital. Please help each of us heal so that we can go forward making this nation and this world a better place. Amen.
Amen.
Whether it is with those words that inspire you in your prayers or perhaps your own motivations that enable you to send your prayers up to the divine, let us just take a moment of silence. Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Amen.
Rabbi,
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. I think it's important that we do acknowledge, obviously, the terrible events that have occurred in Washington, D.C. today. I did release a statement earlier expressing my feelings about what has transpired. I did think it may be appropriate also, as part of my statement that I released, I also provided a quote from one of my favorite public servants, and that's former United States Senator Robert Kennedy. And he stated, "What has violence ever accomplished? What has it ever created? No martyr's cause has ever been stilled by an assassin's bullet. No wrongs have ever been righted by riots and civil disorders. A sniper is only a coward, not a hero, and an uncontrolled or uncontrollable mob is only the voice of madness, not the voice of the people." And that was stated by United States Senator Robert Kennedy. I did speak to several of the coalition members tonight about going on with our meeting. The response I did receive was that the members of the coalition did want to continue with tonight's work session. This is a work group session. And so that's why we are continuing with the business before us. We're also trying to make sure that we are in compliance with the executive order. Again, this is the executive order handed down by the governor of the state of New York that has to do with police reform and reinvention, the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. Now, for 5 meetings, the individual members, appointed members of the coalition, have been educated by our chief of police, Robert Noble, and they've also heard from the public. And I think it's time for us to hear from those individual members of the coalition, to hear what they've learned, to hear about their perspective, and to hear their recommendations as we take the next step in compliance to this executive order. I should have started with this, but I did not. Again, I want to introduce the appointed individuals who are members of the CCSC. We have Peter Lanza, Rabbi Robbie Weiner, we have Tony Reynolds, we have Liz Rivera, Paul Cirillo, Rosemary Panio, and we have Jim Poulin. We are joined by 2 of our town board members that I see. We have Councilman Tom Diana and
Happy New Year.
woman Alice Roker.
Happy New Year to both of you.
We have Steve Ronco. We have Steve Ronco from the Westchester County DA's office.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We also have with us, and I want to give a special thank you for her continued assistance in getting these meetings off the ground, our town clerk, Diana Quast, who has also provided minutes that will be included in the report. We have with us as well, who's joining us is Ernie Garcia from Thompson and Bender. Thompson and Bender is our communications consultant for the town, and will be assisting us with the drafting of the final report. And we also have with us, it looks like we have our town attorney, Adam Rodriguez, and we have Dax Armstrong. Good evening. And we have Dax Armstrong representing Yorktown for Justice, one of our groups that have been participating as well. And so, as I said earlier, tonight is a work session, is a work group. Good evening. Is a work group and really focused on the members of the coalition. This is our opportunity, what I believe is your opportunity for a conversation, a very open and honest conversation about what you've learned from the instructional presentations that we've received from Chief Noble. And Chief, I want to thank you for your efforts in that. And also for us to hear what your perception and recommendations are going to be for us to include in the first draft of our report, which ultimately would then go to a public hearing. So we will get input from the public after the report's drafted. This is all dictated within the process that was put forward by the state last year. From there, it would be, after the public hearing, it would be finalized and submitted to the town board for approval. And then once that approval is granted by the town board, it would then be submitted to the state of New York. And so that is the point we're now at, which is hopefully the beginning of the drafting after we hear what those recommendations are going to be from the members of the coalition. I do want to go over to Chief Noble. Chief, I know you're not presenting tonight, but I wanted to see if you wanted to have some words that you wanted to share to the public or anything that you wanted to share with the coalition.
No, I think I shared something in an informative communication with the members of the coalition, and I stand by what I had said in that communication. That it's been a privilege. It's a nice group of folks. I mean, I can't say it any more matter of factly than that. Thank you for listening. Thank you, for your support through the process, and it gave me the opportunity to present to you the fine work that our agency does on a day-to-day basis, and there's always room for improvement. I think I've done some spots where we can improve, and I'm just curious to see what your take is from learning a little bit about us and what I think is the exemplary work that we do in the community. So thank you for listening and for your attention. And this is kind of a thankless job serving on this coalition. And, thanks for stepping up. Absolutely.
I'm going to open it up to the members of the coalition to see, again, this is our opportunity to hear from you. You've heard from a lot of people over the last 5 meetings, and now it's your turn to provide the public with, again, your assessment, your thoughts, and your recommendations that should be included in the first draft of the report that we'll be drafting. So if there's anyone from the coalition who would like to provide their thoughts.
Okay. I'm here.
Rosemary, you want to go first?
If you wish.
Sure. Jump right in there.
Okay. I've written this up because I don't want to leave anything out. To the Honorable Supervisor Slater and members of the Yorktown Board, the Honorables Ed Lachterman, Alice Roker, Vishnu Patel, Tom Diana, and of course to our town clerk, Diana Quast. I'd like to thank you for appointing me to the Yorktown Coalition on Community Safety and Engagement. It's been an honor to serve in an attempt to comply with Executive Order 203 and to participate in this important task, along with so many other talented people. I've met a lot of new people. I have listened very carefully to all the comments. I've read every article and every letter written. I've studied procedure and training and learned so much about our Yorktown Police Department. I have studied the record as provided by Chief Robert Noble and learned, rather proudly, that Yorktown is one of only 16 municipalities to have an accredited police department, which means it complies with vigorous training and follows and complies with best practices. I've read every letter, studied every comment, and really listened and taken notes at every listening session. I especially reviewed carefully the letters written by the superintendents of the Lakeland and Yorktown School District, both of whom emphasize the cooperation and service that exists to protect and safeguard our precious school-age children, not to mention the many programs that it offers to engage our youth. The subject of race has come up a lot in our talks, and it's unfortunate, no doubt, that racism exists everywhere. However, we have been mandated to review the procedures and behavior of the Yorktown Police Department. I've had many neighbors comment to me on the positive experiences they've had with the Yorktown Police. The questions of the Community Review Board has come up on numerous occasions, and I've thought this over very carefully. But my response to this is still that we actually have a review board, which is responsible for overseeing the PD, and it's called our duly elected town board. Racism, no question, needs to be defeated wherever it exists. We must root it out in our town, in our schools, wherever it exists. But we need to do this with the help of our parents in the home, our teachers in the schools, our faith community, which means they need to do this in the houses of worship, and in our neighborhoods, and in our clubs, our sports clubs. I personally found no evidence that the Yorktown Police Department or any member of the department engages in acts of racism. It consists of people, I have found out, of all backgrounds and gender, who have been well trained and follow the letter of the law. I have the utmost respect for Chief Robert Noble and confidence in its leadership. I do believe some very good ideas, however, to prevent and to minimize lethal outcomes in the future has come out of our discussions. The bowler wrap, we talked about that at great length. The burner gun. I hope I have some of these terms right, Chief. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. And the use of body cams for officers when dealing with the public on duty. I believe they protect the public as well as the police officers. And they provide a review of every stop and occurrence. In closing, I hope we continue to volunteer in our community, work to teach our children to respect our laws, to be a positive example to our children and grandchildren, respect our neighbors, and treat all with respect and kindness. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. We appreciate your thoughts and your perspective on that.
Thank you very much.
Any members of the coalition who, again, this is, yeah, Jimmy, I mean, this, again, for the members of the coalition, this is supposed to be an open conversation. So,
Okay.
I know it can be difficult with a camera on and you're seeing yourself on the Zoom. I totally get it. You know, I think Councilman Diana and Councilwoman Roker and I can attest to how difficult that can be sometimes. But this is supposed to be an open conversation, so feel free to engage. This is not, you know, testimony. This is just a
A lot of screen time for you there, Supervisor. First, I'd like to say Happy New Year. Hope the holidays treated you all very well. Chief, I wanted to first call you out to say when this executive order came down, I can only imagine what might have gone through your mind of, oh my God, now I've got to defend my group. Now, certainly going into it, you had not a lot to defend. and what I have found during our sessions is, for the most part, people are pretty happy with what you're doing and how you're handling things in your group. So I wanted to call that out to let you know, at least I recognize that it could have been very difficult when this first started. So I'd like to start there. There are several things that, and probably more questions than I probably have the answers to, but I know that if you wanted to make sure and work with getting the mobile crisis unit, I know that's a big deal. As some of you know that mental health is extremely important to me in my world. I had some other ideas in thinking, is there a way to, for officers to take college courses that would set up a certificate that, in the counseling world that might benefit each of the police officers, and maybe there could be pay increases to that. Now, of course, I don't know anything about the budget. And I don't pretend to. So if I had my best wish would be that the Yorktown Police could have their own person hired, social worker, whatever, as part of their 40 hours a week or 30 hours, whatever it is, to kind of be there to be a source immediately at the ready. Dealing with having your liaison with St. Vincent's, while I know St. Vincent's is amazing, St. Vincent's is not around the corner. And sometimes things need to happen and need to happen now. So that was always that was a concern to me. So, I do know, Chief, that you are, that's something that's important to you as well, and I appreciate that. Race has come up quite a bit during this time, and I have a few questions that maybe, we can come to an answer with. My first question, is, if you don't see racism, does it exist?
Mm-hmm.
Now, statistics would tell you that, racism really exists everywhere. If you've got one person in your community that's racist, then you cannot say that your town, your community has no issue with race. If there's one person that is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does Yorktown have the same issues as maybe a Peekskill? I know that was a force that we had looked at. Probably not. And that's just, my guess. There's a different demographic that we're dealing with. But we're here to try to figure out, where does race and the Yorktown Police, where is it there? So my first question where that's concerned is there any type of racism within the Yorktown Police Department? Systemic, maybe somebody's family's got some background there that has some issues that kind of spurs on that. I don't know. But if there is, there's another question that comes with that. What do we do about it? How do we fix it? I'm not always 100% saying, okay, if something comes up that's really horrible, they should be fired. Maybe it's, recommendations, whatever it is. We take that route. If there isn't, how do we make us better? All right. We've got, zero issues of racism on our force. What can we do to get better? Because we are not just trying to figure this out for Yorktown Police Department 2021. This is something we want to have ready. We want to be the blueprint, if I can use that word. So I think those are two questions that come from anybody on the police force having are racist. I also, in the last couple of years, I've gotten an opportunity to know Chief a little bit, and I really 100% believe if you knew about it, you'd put a stop to it. That's my feeling and what I have come to know from you, Chief. What do we do when issues of racism appear in our community? How do we handle that? Because maybe it comes down to a store owner saying something to a customer and it's a he said, she said, whatever, you're not going to necessarily know who's in the right or in the wrong. How do you handle that? Because not every race issue is against the law. And that's a very tough situation to be in. But at the same token, we need to be able to respond and handle these things. And what do we do? Can we put on the books how we would handle something of that nature? Because by the time the police gets there, there's going to be the two stories, your story, my story, and the right story. And sorry, Chief, you and your team got to put that together. What would be awesome is if we could learn from our neighbors. Every town in New York is going through this. It would be great to be able to predict and say where our demographics are going to be in 5, 10, 15 years. We can't do that. We just don't know. How do we predict? Well, I'd say the best way we can predict is to learn from our neighbors. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Learn from our neighbors. Now, if we've got different demographics, like maybe a Peekskill or White Plains or Greenberg, who are a little bit more diverse than Yorktown, well, what are they doing? Because there is a chance that our demographics can change. What happens when you have great schools, you've got a great police force, people move to your town? And we're not going to be saying, okay, only white people or only black people or LBGT, we've got it all. So what do? Let's look and see what our neighbors are doing. And maybe there's some recommendations they have that we can get together, get on the books, and then it's ready when and if it ever happens. And without any luck, none of it will ever need to be used. So that's where my thoughts are. I know I gave a whole bunch of other questions to answer, but that's where I was really thinking. I think our town is good. I think we can be better. So there's that. To my fellow coalition, it's been great serving with you on this, and we'll continue to finish this work. And thank you for entrusting me to be on this coalition. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks, Jim.
Chief, is there anything that you wanted to address from some of those questions?
Go ahead.
One of the things that I thought, was relevant is the fact for the first time we're mandating diversity training for all town employees that we started in 2020. Jimmy, I don't know if that answers any of your questions. I know, Chief, you've also explained to us about the principal policing courses that are taken. I'm not sure if that would apply there as well.
Yes, and we had scheduled that to take place in March in-service training before COVID struck. So even before any of the events that occurred that spurred on Executive Order 203 came to be, we were implementing that in March until we had to scale it back. So, and it was a great training. I mean, I think everybody learned a lot, so much so that, we are going to include it annually in our in-service training. And, Jim, to your question, I mean, if there's a racist on my police force, I don't want him or her. I mean, they gotta go. There's no business. There's no place for that in law enforcement. There's no place for that anywhere. I mean, it's just not acceptable. So, we're going to continue to, try to improve with our training, with our conversations. And, the town also has a harassment policy where employees can report harassment of any kind to their supervisor, and it has to get to the level of the department head, and it's acted upon. So it would kind of fall in that as well. Any type of harassment.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, did I answer that?
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that I believe in. Like I said, I believe if there was an issue of race on the forest, that you would deal with it. There's no question, and that's what, at least the way, the relationship that I've gotten to know you over the last several years. That's what I believe. But we also have to know that just because we don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And please, I'm not saying that I know somebody, because if I did, I'd tell you.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, listen, in the age of whistleblowers, cell phones, cameras, if there's not many secrets out there, Jim.
That's
Right.
That's true. That is true. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that arise that, will, just when you think you've learned it all, you find out you need to learn something else. So
That's the world I live in every day.
I know.
People think you can turn the page to a new calendar. It's just another day,
Yeah.
2020 to 2021. It's another day and something new is going to happen.
Yeah.
The other thing, Jimmy, that I just for your and for the coalition's education. So Councilwoman Roker and I did meet with legislators Gashi and Smith specifically about the mobile crisis unit, to advocate for the mobile crisis unit to be brought back. They were both very interested and supportive. They recognized the need. Legislator Smith is obviously, he's in a leadership role as regarding the county's own review and compliance within EO 203, and he provided some great insight from his standpoint as well. But that was something that we did have a very productive conversation about. Councilwoman Roker, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about the conversation that we had.
Yeah, I know, and the chief participated with us.
Absolutely.
Right. Sorry, Chief. Yes.
Colin says that he knows the county exec has put extra money away for mental health. He didn't know whether or not any of that money was going to go to the police in mental health. So that's a question he said he would get back to us.
Yeah.
Because he thought it was a good idea as well.
Right. So that's where that was right before the holidays. So we have not had a chance to circle back with them to continue that conversation. But Jimmy, just for you and for the public and for the coalition, that conversation did take place, and it will continue to be followed up on until we get an answer from the county.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. The anyone else, other members of the coalition? I'd love to hear from more Liz or Pete or.
I'm just nervous.
I'm sorry?
I'm just nervous to talk.
Nah, please. This is, Tony too. I mean, you've been you've been listening to 5 meetings, just taking it all in. So this is really your opportunity to let the community know what you observed and what you think direction we should go in.
Okay, I'm just nervous and I don't have a statement, but some of what I've learned and some of what I wanted to kind of share from what I thought, I remember us talking a lot about, the public asking for like a civilian review board, and I know that we have the town board and that's what the town board is for. But, maybe it's just a lot of people in our community are not okay with or they don't know that they can go to the town board. I didn't know that I could go to the town board and to file a complaint if I had one. I don't have one, but I'm just saying maybe just letting the public know that this is a resource and that they're safe to come to the town board and to file their complaint. And even if it is not, if they're afraid because they want it to be anonymous, but it can't because you can't really investigate it, how do we keep them anonymous? How do we keep them safe to be able to report? So that's something I would like to look into. It's something that we could think of as a civilian review board, that the public will be okay or feel comfortable to come to file a complaint if they had one. A lot of also something that I wrote down was, the use of body cameras. And I mean, I don't know if we can discuss the letter that was sent to us today, but, I think the use of body cameras, it would be a good method. It protects both the police department and the public. I don't know, again, our budget, but, I think that's something that we should look into. I think it's something that, if there was ever a complaint, we can look at that. what else did I kind of, and I also had questions about racial profiling. And I think that in your letter, Chief Noble, you did point out, that, racial profiling is strictly prohibited. But, what is the training that goes behind that? How do we train our officers to not racial profile people? And I know that we have our many hours of training. And I think that our department trains a lot more than many other departments. So I think just that concerns me. I'm from New York City. I remember growing up in an era where, racial profiling was part of what NYPD did, and it caused a lot of issues. And again, maybe not Yorktown, but that's something that we should also look at. And again, I think that Yorktown PD, I think you guys are amazing. The reason why I moved up here was because of the police department, was because I felt comfortable raising my children, me as a minority here in Yorktown. I feel very comfortable here and I feel very safe. But, we can always strive to be even better than what we are.
Thank you.
Liz, great.
Thank
you.
Feedback. Great feedback. So we're talking, Liz, from what you're saying, better education of the town board as our role as commissioners, and maybe a more formal process, or a more formal, process is the best way to describe it, for residents to file a complaint through the town board as it relates to the police in our role as police commissioners. Does that capture it?
Yeah.
The other two things were the body cameras, and then additional training in regards to racial profiling.
Correct.
Okay, great. That's great feedback.
And if I could jump in real quick, Liz, thank you very much. Number one, and what I would want people to know is that along with the town board, we want to hear your complaints. You can come into the police department. I explained that personnel complaint policy, and we encourage people, if they want to come in, you come in, and then obviously, if you don't think your concerns are being addressed, you can go to the town board. If it's something of a criminal nature, you can go to the district attorney's office as well. But that's why we're trying to be transparent about that, and that's why I was suggesting putting that policy up on our website so that everybody could see it, and that you can come into your police department, because how do you get the word out there that everybody thinks, oh, they're going to come get me? Well, that just doesn't happen. That's the quickest way a cop can get in trouble. And you've got our chief, the chief of our district attorney branch. The minute we start going after somebody punitively, that's when we violate someone's civil rights, and that's the quickest way you lose your job. And that goes to racial profiling as well. Before, like you said, you live down in the city. I never did. So when people thought about racial profiling, and I'm a cop and now I'm the chief, and I'm like, well, that's one of the quickest ways to lose your job. Who the heck does that? But like I said, I listened. Listen, I mean, who in their right mind is a cop?
Come on.
There's a few bad apples. I mean, that's in every profession. But that's why I listened, and I thought to include that, in our rules and regs, because what you think is just, who the heck would do that? Well, now we're memorializing. We're putting that in our general orders. And, everybody's going to receive that and get that training. And like I said, if there is additional training, on that we can pass along to the membership, we're going to look to do that. And it doesn't have to be somebody, for something like that, it doesn't have to be somebody coming in and speaking. If there is, if there's some type of webinar or something where, a lot of the training that we're trying to incorporate,
there's
officers,
TED Talks, there's a lot of training out there.
Exactly. And it's something where, what I mean, once you go on too long, you lose the audience. So if it's something that's a little quicker and more impactful, that's what we're looking for, where guys can, click on a button and say, okay, hey, this is coming to your in-car computer. This is what we want you to watch. And we can memorialize that they watched it. And, if they have any questions or any type of, a misunderstanding about what we're trying to tell them, they can go to their supervisor and we'll clarify that. But those are things that we're looking to, improve upon. So again, we get a lot right, but we're looking to get a lot more right. So, thank you very much.
Right. Yeah, Pete.
I'm sitting here. I'm going through all my notes from all the meetings, and I'm keep on coming up with the same stuff. I from what I've known for the 16 years now, I've been in Yorktown. The police department has been great. the interaction I've had in different events that I've been to, they've always been very, forward and nice, and I haven't had any issues. But I keep on coming back to the same things: more training, the body cameras, because I think that protects the citizens and also the police officers.
What I said.
And dash cameras on the cars and SUVs, so that you can see what's going on out on the road when they're not in the car, or if for some reason they're separated. I probably wrote the same thing about 15 times, so I'm sticking with that. But that's where I'm at.
That's great. That's great feedback. Chief, do you have dash cams? I don't know. I don't recall we discussed this before.
We do have them in a few of the cars. It's just, it comes down to dollars, and how you spread it around with equipment. So, I would need, I'd need more. Listen, I like them. And like you said, body cams, we're beta testing them right now. And like I had in the letter to the coalition, we hope to have, a recommendation on the body cam we think works for us, and a cost analysis of what that would cost. So, like I said, our goal is to get that in as soon as possible, but no later than April 30th, and then we can discuss how we're going to finance the acquisition if we do go, in that direction.
Great.
Can I ask a question?
I think we had two people who wanted it.
Oh, okay, all right.
Rose,
Okay.
if you could, you go first.
I just want to know, is there any way that is there any funding for some of these things? Federal funding, or I'm not going to say state funding because I don't think the state has the money, but is there any way we could get funding for these? Any organizations that would be willing? Like we sent out a memo on the bowler wrap, and boom, we were able to buy 3, 4 with donations.
We wound up using that. The cartridges are the most expensive part of that, Ms. Panio. So we will have, I think, by mid-year, we have 3 already. We should have 5. And then once we develop policy and train everybody, those will be out in the field. And again, that's another less than lethal device that the troops can use out there. And I think they're going to come in especially handy with dealing with people who are in mental crisis or emotionally disturbed people. Where
or special need. There are people with special needs too that we have.
I mean, you saw it firsthand. Deployed out there, and now you know why. I was an advocate for that to try to bring that to our agency. So again, we're going to get that out in the field in 2021, and like I said, it's another proactive tool that we can try to use. That's that in proper situations, it's another less than lethal device.
And I think if we reach out, maybe we could find some funding somewhere, some organizations that would be willing to help us with that. I mean, I think it's what's going to happen in the future, so we might as well face it at this point.
Well, I think thankfully the supervisor you have a grant, right, Supervisor, the grant writer that the one who looks into that for us
with an organization, the
Beautiful
Group, who looks for grants. But I don't think it would be. I think it would be good though if within the report we also emphasize the fact that additional funding opportunities would be very helpful for us to be able to afford these types of new technologies and training services and so on and so forth. So I think that would be important to include in the report as well.
I do too.
I think that's going to be very helpful that you include that in the report, because I guess there are certain benchmarks the governor wants you to meet, and you need money to meet those benchmarks.
That's right.
Exactly. So we'll make sure we make a note to include a request for additional funding sources to achieve what we're trying to achieve here,
including the many clubs and organizations that we have in town.
Yep.
They might see fit to take this under their wing, and it could happen more easily than we think.
Of course. I mean, we have so many not-for-profits. Jim, the Lions Club is always, but the Lions Club, the Elks Club, we do have a number of organizations that and we've private individuals, and that's how we got, thanks to Council the bowler wrap technology as well. But I think it's important though, if we're going to submit this to the state of New York, I think it's important though that we include, a few. I would like to say more than a few, but a few lines about the importance of making sure funding is available to help support what we're trying to achieve, because
Wait.
we all know our budgets are tight as they are already. And so if the state wants to see these things being implemented, it'd be great if we could. I don't think it would be unfair to ask them for their help in the financial aspect.
If you don't ask, you don't get. That's for sure.
Right. Jimmy, you wanted to say something before?
I do. I wanted to ask the chief a question, but I did want to first say, because I missed you before, Dax, thank you for your input during this as well. You've had some valuable information to us, and I just want to say I appreciate it. Chief, how do you, after you go through training, your officers go through training, are they given an exam? How are they, how do we know that they got it?
For certain trainings, yes, there is an exam that's given. Your use of force, deadly use of force. For certain, first aid, there are exams that are given. For others, no. There's no pass fail.
Okay, but then how do you know if they really got everything out of the training?
Well, if they have any questions, they can certainly ask the instructor. But yes, not all of the in-service training have tests at the end of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Rabbi?
One quick thing about the grant, about money, and then I'll go into my thoughts about the report. The money thing is that I think we're on the right path, and I also would lean a little bit on the supervisor if he doesn't mind feeling a little pressure, and that is perhaps in any type of meeting that you might have with anyone in the governor's office, or maybe fellow supervisors and town mayors and things of the sort, where you say, hey, we did our job, but the idea that you thought that we could go through this process and not dream of things that were going to cost money is kind of silly. That maybe there is some sort of grant out there that the governor's office could create. Because if the governor is forcing these towns to go through the process of visioning a little bit and making their police departments better, maybe he could do a little bit of visioning on his own to come up with a grant that towns could tie into, where we apply for the grant money and we write in what we want to do, and it has to tie into these reports that we're putting together. But it might be something that's not necessarily in our report, but it is really more of an informal thing that you, supervisor, do, where you're on the phone with somebody in the governor's office saying, hey, is there something in the future that's going to come about where there's like some sort of grant that we apply for? Because that would make a lot of sense.
Happy to do it, without a doubt.
Good.
Yeah, I just, as far as my overall thoughts about this process and some thoughts about going forward and the report. First and foremost, I want to come out and say, in light of Jim and others, the struggle. For me, I began this process, and I think for many in the interfaith community, the clergy community, we don't even ask ourselves the question, does racism exist in our town? Or even to be as bold as to say, does racism exist in our police department? I think that we come out of the gate saying racism exists in our police department, racism exists in my synagogue, racism exists in the churches and in the mosques, and it exists. It's sort of an existential reality for us. That's, I know, from my perspective. And therefore, to start from that point and to hear from Dax and from others, to know that there are people in our community that don't feel comfortable to talk about the racism that they might be experiencing from any government or any institution in our town is not surprising, and it's saddening, but it is an existential component. It is a reality. And that's my starting point. That's where I started from in coming to these meetings and in going forward. At the same time, what I learned very early on was, as it relates to our police department, is that we have a fabulous police department. We have an awesome police department. We have an amazing police department. And so therefore, as I said in a previous meeting, I saw this process as taking our department, helping our department go from, not from bad to good, but from better to best, in terms of taking a fabulous police department and almost like saying, what could we do to make it even better? And so now we're at this point where it's like, so what do we as a coalition, what could we suggest? Who are we to take a great police department and suggest things to make it better? I mean, like if we had a crappy police department, I think we all could list some great things. And that's what I started to think about in terms of this process, is like our job would be so easy if we had a crappy police department. We would say, and this is important. This is an important thought process that I have in terms of what would we say? We would say to the chief, we want you to search for accreditation. We want you to put in your policy that you prohibit, anti-bias kind of thinking and racial profiling. We want you to put that in your policies. We want you to have training, and we want you to have some community outreach programs. These are the things that when we think about towns, or we learn about towns or cities or municipalities that have trouble with racism in all of its forms, we learn that they don't have those things. And yet, our police department has those things. Mm-hmm. So that's great for our police department, and it's great for our town, and hopefully great for our community members. And so therefore, our task is to kind of, what can we do to make things better? And so I absolutely loved the letter that the chief provided, because it underlined not only how committed he is and the department is to continuing the accreditation and underlining the policies against racism, and going further with training and some suggestions about training and continuing the community outreach. But I loved stuff that we already talked about in terms of trying to see if we can get the county to reinstate the mobile crisis unit, the cameras we've already talked about. I think all of that stuff is a way to take a police department to go from better to best. Now, how do I know that? It's because we learned some of this stuff together, and we're also hearing about it from the chief himself. And I also know in talking with friends who live in other towns what they don't have and what we have as a starting point. I mean, that we happen to have a police department the way that we do in terms of the training that they do. I think that it's fabulous. And so improving upon those things only makes us better or arise at best. So last thing I wanted to say, last two little comments is, as it relates to money, I think it would be fabulous if we could get money for training for our police department, additional to what is already set aside by the chief for training. And maybe it means, it's funny that Jim, you asked the chief about how does he know. I was even thinking in terms of I don't know how much, chief, there is accolades that police that members of the force have at certain periods in their journey, but I know in teaching, they do these things, in the rabbinate, as rabbis, we do these things in terms of if we learn a certain amount of material, we get an accolade, we get an award. There's something that's raised up, and maybe it's something that the town awards someone with a special honor for, but specifically for anti-bias training, like specifically about racism, anti-bias training, against racial profiling, like things of that sort. I loved how the chief put in, a specific speaker. And if we hear about other training types of things, that we can incorporate that and then reward, so to speak, individuals who are taking advantage of these things. Last thing, and it's totally an out-of-the-box kind of thought. And if it's offensive, I'm completely sorry, and I'm just kind of throwing it out.
Just bring it on. It's okay.
And it's related to Liz's comment about what I see as a marketing problem for us in our town. And while a community service board or a community resource board, whatever that, I think that is valuable for some communities. I don't know if we're at that level yet because we already have a vehicle. I'm not yet ready to say that our vehicle fails. I want to say, first of all, I think our vehicle is not marketed well. And it's funny that a rabbi is saying it's about marketing, but we do a lot of marketing in the religion biz as well. So, the last comment that I want to make is the out-of-the-box idea that I was playing around with was, and so I apologize, Chief, if this is a little weird, and that is, what if we marketed the idea of people going to the town board if they have concerns or they had a run-in, so to speak, or a difficulty with somebody. What if the campaign was also marketed through the police or with the police's website and marketing materials? I was imagining almost a tagline of, Yorktown cares, or like, we care.
Yeah.
And then just like a little line that says, if you have any trouble with any officer or for any reason, please call. And then there's a phone number, the town board at this number. And it's not just marketed through the town, but it's an interesting thing to see. We're pushing, the chief does these amazing community outreach programs, and he has lots of great marketing and lots of great programs. But what if there was also in the small corner of the marketing that police puts out there, or they have it every once in a while on the website, if you had "We Care" with a big heart, and it says, if there are any concerns at all you might have with an officer, please feel free to reach out to an unbiased person. But it's a marketing campaign that we think about. So that's what I got.
Awesome. That's great, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Great ideas. So we're talking, Rabbi, advocacy for funding, acknowledging racism exists, and I think that's something that we should really talk a bit more about, because I think it would be important to put that obviously in the report. I think it's important to acknowledge that racism does exist, and it exists in every community, including ours. And so I think that's important, obviously, to have in there.
I'm sorry, Supervisor, but I forgot to even say that in light of my opening statement, and that is that's the reason why the chief and the police department has all of these things already in place. Because I want to say, whether the chief is going to say it or not, I want to say he acknowledges the existential reality of racism, because you wouldn't have these policies if you thought racism didn't exist.
That's great. I'm writing it down right now.
You wouldn't train your police officers in anti-bias training if you thought racism isn't a problem. No, you train them because it could be a problem. That's what's great about the department.
It's great.
Yeah. And with what you said about the marketing campaign, Rabbi, that is out of the box. But again, I still want people to feel comfortable calling me or calling, a supervisor on our job and making a complaint. We've looked into them in the past, and there have been complaints that have definitely been substantiated based upon a citizen complaint. That absolutely does happen. But yeah, if somebody else, really struggles with the concept, to have the availability to call a member of the town board who are police commissioners, that's not a problem.
I think that if we're going to take the information that we received seriously, that we have residents, specifically residents of people of color, who might not feel comfortable going to the police department after an issue, whatever the issue is. And maybe it's not now, maybe it's something in the future. If we're going to take that reality seriously, then I think that we make our town better by doing something, moving, trying to create great and welcoming and comfortable gateways for people to walk through. And I heard that loud and clear from some of the things that we received.
And my way of trying to meet that challenge is, who feels that way, and can I speak with them? Come speak with me. I think I'm a little ahead of you, because anybody who feels that way, I'd like to talk to them, or I'd like them to meet a few of my officers. And that's why in my tenure, I've spoken at the Islamic Center. I've spoken in multiple temples. I've met with an interfaith group. Anybody who's asked to speak with me, like I said, I don't duck anybody. I enjoy it. Listen, that's in my wheelhouse. I'm not the smartest guy in this room, but you put me with just about anybody, and I can guarantee you I'm going to find some common ground there. And we're going to work on the positives and try to get through any of the barriers that may exist. So, while you have me as your chief, that's a strength of mine.
Right.
So that's what I would like to do, to try to not even, necessitate going to the board. If some people are going to have preconceived biases and they don't want to talk to a cop. I'm trying to break through that. That's hopefully what's come across in this process. I've done listening, but I've tried to. I think I've really tried to, put it out there that you got somebody who's accessible and listens, and you know what? Even if we agree to disagree sometimes. There's common ground will be found, and you're not going to have somebody who's just going to shut you down.
It was a very, very, very hard lesson for me to learn as a rabbi, to know that there were people, just by the nature of who I was, they didn't feel comfortable talking to me. And I'm a rabbi, Chief. I mean, this is like what I do. I mean, I got to talk to people, and people got to talk. People, no one's going to want to talk to me. I mean, that's hard. But to feel comfortable knowing that somebody could go to, say it was an issue of gender, a woman on our board of trustees, to talk to them first. And it was basically, I came to the reality, Chief, that it had less to do with me and any of the skills that I had or didn't have, and more to do with the reality of the biases or the challenges that the other person had. And I gave into that, and that was helpful. So we're talking about perhaps, hopefully, a very, very small percentage of people, but at least we're helping that small percentage of people.
Sure.
Chief, you're a big hit. You're always a big hit at the Senior Advisory Committee.
Oh, well,
What I want to say is, with regard to stores, I think Jim brought up something about people who shop in different stores. And I was in retail for 40 years, and the key to everything is how you treat people, and once again, how polite you are and how nice you are. I don't know why the Chamber of perhaps we could suggest to Sergio and Aaron at the Chamber that they might want to do a workshop for their members and people who are in business generally, even if they're not their members, about this subject. We could at least try to do that. I think that's one way we could reach out to them.
Well, Pete,
it's to their benefit.
Pete, you're the vice president of the chamber. That's your other hat.
Yes.
I understand. My understanding. Well, can you tell us about some of the things that I know that there are a couple of conversations that have been going on within the chamber specifically about this issue?
Well, actually, I haven't talked about this with them, but we can definitely bring it up. We're always open to do workshops and offer stuff to our businesses and our people in the town. So this is definitely a good idea, and I'll talk to Sergio about it.
Good.
I know that Sergio was also, because I did have a conversation with Sergio about this issue, and I apologize, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Pete, but my bad. But I know that he is working with some of the members about creating a subcommittee. I think it's like a diversity in business subcommittee, and so that's one of the ways that they're trying to address this issue as well.
Yeah, with this COVID, we haven't had as many of our normal meetings. So.
Yeah, I know. The trustee meetings over Zoom or at 8:00 in the morning are a lot of fun. How about Tony? Tony, any thoughts for us?
Tony's forever quiet. Honestly, I don't have any additional ones. For the chief, everything that I would have thought about to ask, the chief is already doing that. All those things are in place, and like Rosemary said, things can get better. Just like how the rabbi said, you can be better than yourself today. Every day we try to improve. But I don't have anything. I mean, personally, in this town, I've never been treated different. I've never experienced racism, but again, I've lived in a bubble maybe my whole life. So, but I'm not saying it doesn't exist, because I mean, just watching the news, we see that it exists. We know that it exists in the town. Everything is just, the chief is already addressing something that will happen. We're going to have people coming up from the city to Yorktown. They're used to the tensions of everything with the city, whether it's race or gender differentiations. So they will come up with that like little emotional scarring, not realizing that our town is very open. Our town is already, our town's police is already versed in how things will be handled. So I don't think really I have anything else to add. So
Okay.
Thank you, Tony.
All right. Who else from the coalition? Paul, have we? You got anything else
Everything
for?
that I was thinking was already said, but I would just like to thank you, Chief, for your time. And you taught us a lot, and your guys are great, and you're great. And you spend a lot of time with the training and making sure your guys know what they're doing, and always out there in the public and making making everyone familiar with you guys and comfortable with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Like I said, that means a lot that somebody your age, because if everybody, with what you see on, in social media and a lot of different things, there's a lot of pressure on people your age to really that the police aren't that popular. And you know what? We're regular people that just want to go home safe to our families and do the best we can while we're working out there. And to have you have that mindset, it's reassuring. It really is, because there's a lot of good people that put on the uniform and try to do the right thing out there. And the ones who don't, the ones who are the bad apples, that's on us to find them and to not have them in police services. But thank you very much. And hopefully you'll sit for the test one of these days. Keep your options open. You never know.
Great.
They're open.
Hey, Paul, can I don't mean to put you on the spot, but as a representative of the youth of our community, what other ways do you think we can be communicating with the youth, whether it's from town hall or from the police station? How would you recommend is there better ways for us to do that?
I think definitely with social media is one of them, and I know the Yorktown Police does a good job with going to schools and having those groups in the schools teaching about that, just so everyone is familiar and it is open. And I know those choices are available. I've seen them myself, so they're out there.
Great.
Thanks, Paul.
Is there, Paul, I don't mean to keep asking you, on the social media side, I always ask this question. Is there one, because now social media is just, morphed into this whole thing. Is there a specific channel or medium that you would recommend? So I know obviously the chief and the police department does a phenomenal job on Facebook. Are there other social media avenues that they should also consider exploring?
I would say Instagram. It's just like Facebook. I would say that's probably would be the second best.
Okay. And,
so do I need to create a Finsta for that, or just the Instagram?
I was actually going to suggest, as a part of the report, that we recommend the police department do regular TikTok videos on a weekly basis.
Oh, that would be so cute. They love TikTok.
Guys would be really good at it. I know.
You're really going to put a target on my back.
Yeah.
That's got to get in the report.
TikTok videos for the PD, no problem.
I don't know if any of you read, I read the Italian newspaper every day, and recently there was an article about a 15-year-old who unfortunately passed away, but he has been beatified as the saint of the internet, because during his short years of 15, he spent most of his life talking about religion and faith and had a whole following of young people. So I guess the Vatican is ahead of you guys.
Very good.
Supervisor.
Yes, sir.
Is there a way that we could meet up with one of the, get information from some of the other towns and the other police forces in our county?
I'll do, so there's an email group that I'm a part of with all the other supervisors and mayors. And so I'm happy to inquire about what proposals they're considering, and I'll collate the responses and send it back through the coalition. Does that work?
Yeah. Just think whenever you can learn anything. It may be irrelevant to us, but maybe there's one nugget we can find,
Yeah. Listen,
as long as my age is good there, Chief.
What?
At my age. You talk about Paul being so young. Same old.
Oh. Well, you're young at heart, Jim.
There you go.
All right, let's get off that subject, please.
Right.
Good. All right. So Other thoughts from the coalition, though. I mean, the big things that I've written down are training, is the mobile crisis unit, the cameras, the additional education and potential campaign on the use of the town board as the police commissioner role, but also in conjunction with the chief and his officers. Let's see, we had the mobile crisis unit. Oh, also considering, and Rabbi, I'd love to riff with you more on this, but considering some type of town recognized accolade for the training, for extensive, we'll say extensive training, right, in anti-bias and anti-racism. That could be something that we can come up with.
Yeah, I actually would riff also with the chief to know if there is something in the world of the police department where, whether it's in another area of training that they receive an accolade, is there something that could be in sort of tandem with that? So it might be something like that they're used to having in firearms training, where it's like, you reach a certain accolade, you reach a certain number of hours in the cage or whatever, you get an accolade. Versus, with this, you could have a certain number of learning hours on bias training or something like that, and the town gives them a similar accolade. That's all that I'm thinking about. But basically, I would borrow from what's already in the police department. The other thing that I want to ask the chief specifically about is that he put in his report suggesting the speaker M. Quinton Williams. Now, this is not my world, so I didn't know if us putting that in our report is important when we're talking about training, and if he wanted to share his thoughts about this person or just letting us know a little bit about this program.
Well, no, I saw him speak. He presented to the staff at the Yorktown Central School District, and I was able to sit in on a few of the discussions and trainings that he had, and I came away with, I think my cops would relate to. I think, the instructor is very important if you were to have somebody speak on this topic. And I came away from listening to him thinking that, he'd probably be beneficial, in this discussion and in this type of training. So that's why I mentioned him specifically.
So then my recommendation is to add that to our section on training, specifically put that in there.
So additional training with Mr.
You have his name, Soup. Yeah, you have it's in there. Yeah.
Yep.
M. Quinton Williams, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Great. Chief, is there anything that you want to add based on the comments tonight? Based on what we're hearing from the coalition? No, I think, like I said, very, very well received. And I think there's, based on the comments, I think quite a few of them, we can make happen. And I think they fall in line with a lot of the suggestions that I made for the implementation. Some of the things are, out of the box, and I think we can craft, a message, like I said, like what the rabbi was saying with, we care. We could probably make something like that happen. But and I'm listening. I know there's a few people out there I'll never reach, but I'm not going to give up trying, and that's why I'm saying that. That's why I've been.
I can help you here.
What's that?
I said I've got a suggestion for you.
Well, I'm all ears, Alice.
You are absolutely right. If once you start talking to someone, they'll get it. And all of the information you gave off to this coalition over the last couple of weeks, I think would be excellent on its own in a video for people to understand what your department does and who you are. I think, if you're going to break through, that is how you're going to break through. There are some people who, as Tony says, come to Yorktown, haven't been broken elsewhere. And so they're never going to come to you. But for many, they will come, but they need to hear you. They need to see you. And I think, like I said to you earlier today, government does a bad job of public relations.
Yeah.
You are good at what you do. And the presentation blew me away. and I've known you guys for a long time. But I think if more people got to see you, and not the chief, but the person who's making this presentation and listening to you, they might come forward.
I think it's a great idea.
Good idea. Very good idea.
I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
Can I just say something, because it's been bothering me since I heard someone told me that someone said racism doesn't exist in Yorktown. And when I was town clerk, I underwent many instances of racism.
Really?
My first week, this man walks in my door. I'm right here in the front, and my deputy's behind me. He literally pushes me to the side to get behind me because he thinks she's the clerk. And I could hear my poor deputy going, "Oh God, she's the clerk." And when I turned around and looked at the man, he was devoid of color. And so the way I handle people like him, I said, "Okay, I'm busy right now, but if you go outside and sit on that bench for a few minutes, I'll come out to you." And that's the way I handle people. Go out, sit down, think about what you did. And then come back, and I'll be a really happy girl because I've made you sit down and to think about why I'm asking you to go out there and sit down. It wasn't the first. It was the first, but it was followed by many, many others. Racism can have a very subtle, it can be very subtle, but you get the point. And when I talk to white people, what I say is that you may never have had it directed towards you because you're white. So you wouldn't know. So it's when people say it doesn't exist in Yorktown, I go, please, it exists everywhere.
Everywhere. That's what I said. It exists everywhere.
You were absolutely right.
Alice, you know firsthand, I was sitting minding my own business with my wife one summer day, and somebody called me a honky mother. You know that story, and that happened right in Yorktown. So it all comes in all shapes.
It does.
Forms.
It does.
It's all about what's in your heart, man. It's house to house. It's how you're raised and how you raise your family.
Absolutely. It's what you learn in your home. Absolutely.
Yep.
Parents' conversation. It's all very important.
It is so important, particularly with young children.
Absolutely.
They don't
We're having a lot of those conversations in my house.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think it's important for the report to also acknowledge the fact that racism does exist, and it exists in all of our communities, including the town of Yorktown. I think that's an important point. I think that's an important point to include in the report. What Rabbi was saying.
Bless.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bless you, Pete.
Thank you.
Very good. Just trying to think if there are any other items that we may have missed. Anything else that anyone wants to add?
The only thing that I would add in light of what we were just talking about is Jim's point when he was giving his opening. And that was adding the important point about racism, that if we're going to say that racism exists in Yorktown, which I think it's important, I would add the little nuance that Jim provided. And that was that even though that we might not have it in any of our statistics, or we might not be seen clearly in any data that we see in our town records or in the police department, we as a coalition recognize, and then whatever the statement is. But that nuance, I think, is extremely important. It's because, it underlines the work that we're trying to do, that, we don't want to say, it's rampant. We see it, it's actually the opposite. We're going forward from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Yep. Very good. Ernie Garcia, can you just, is there anything, I know that you've been typing away over there. Is there anything that you need us to expand on or revisit?
Not right now.
Okay. Very good. Well, if there's nothing else that any of the members of the coalition want to put forward, I think what we can do then next is we're going to working with the town clerk, Diana, again, I want to thank her personally for doing a great job helping us out with these meetings, as well as taking the minutes. We're going to collate the report. Ernie Garcia from Thompson and Bender is going to help wordsmith the report, at least the introduction and the recommendations. Working with our town clerk's office, we'll collate the correspondence that we've received and shared, and then we'll put an initial draft together. That draft, again, in accordance with what we're following from the state, will then be disseminated to the public. We'll reconvene and we'll have essentially a public hearing on the report to gain or hear from the public about what the recommendations are, and then we will revise said report and then present it to the town board. And again, we're trying to do this all by the 1st of April, and that's the timeline that we're working on. Any questions from the coalition?
So will we get an outline of the report so that we can study it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It'll be circulated to the members of the coalition, obviously, to make sure that it's accurate and it encompasses everything that we've talked about here today, as well as any other ideas that you may have that you would like to see included.
And our date is what, April?
The date that it has to be submitted to the state by is April 1st. So we have to get through the drafting of the first edition, the next public meeting, and then the approval of the town board, all within really the next 3 months. So we're still on track to meet those goals, but that's the timeline that we're working on.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Councilwoman Roker, I know we have Councilman Patel also who joined us. I want to acknowledge him. Or Councilman Diana, do you want to add anything before we sign off?
No, I think it's all been said at this point. I'm going to hold off till the next meeting and let everybody come together at that point. I can give nothing but accolades to our police department and the way it's run. And a finer police department you're not going to find. And the training that they get and the way they get it and the way it's documented and so on and so forth is second to none.
Great. Councilwoman Roker, anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm good. I think I've said as much as I could. We talk about our police department. I am proud of all of them, every man and woman that works in that building. What more can I tell you?
Yep, I hear you. Thank you. Councilman Patel, are you there?
Yes.
Would you like to add anything? Oh, I think you just went mute, Councilman. I think you just hit the mute button.
Yeah, he hit the mute button.
Okay, can I hear you now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Any comments?
Okay, when chiefs hire somebody and we approve it, if something goes wrong, we can blame the chief, and he has a very good staff, and he communicates with us and we speak to him. So when it comes everything to the board, we will discuss and we'll support him. Because one of the reasons, when Nancy Elliott was there, she put a later something she wrote in the New York Times. And I think that thing's still truth. Why people come to the Yorktown and, safety and housings and all these things. Other than politics, I think that Chief is really doing well. They are going to support him. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Patel. Okay, so then with that, we will adjourn our meeting, and we will notice our next meeting probably in the month of February at this point. We have not set that date, but we will work on that date in the coming days and then publicize it for the public. In the meantime, I do want to personally thank all the members of the coalition for their commitment to our community and for the dedication to this cause. I really do appreciate your efforts. And it's been a wonderful experience, and I really do want to thank all of you individually. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Stay
Thanks,
safe and
everyone.
healthy.
Good night, everybody, and Happy New Year.
Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy names.